Hi guys, how you going? Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new, welcome. So today I'm going to be doing a bit of work on the Pajero, and in particular going to be changing the fuel filter. I've just recently come back from doing border track, so from the very tip of Victoria all the way down to Mount Gambier, straight down the border. Amazing track, absolutely loved it, had a great time with the boys. If you go back to the channel, I'll pop a card up in the corner. I've got a complete video on each day of the trip. We did it over about, I think it was 4 or 5 days, and it was an amazing experience. Now, it just so happens though, at the end of border track, I picked up a bit of a rough idle. So I'm going through all the basics before I send it off to the mechanic for him to give it a bit of a look at. So I've recently just changed air filter. I've put some Mitsubishi injection cleaner through the fuel system. That hasn't changed things at all. So I'm going to do the fuel filters next. Based on talking to a few of the guys at the clubs, it could be something, it could be engine mounts, it could be injectors, who knows. But the cheapest way to approach this is a process of elimination. With my OBD plug and the app, I've checked to see if there are any error codes, and there's none. So it won't hurt to change the fuel filter. One of the big questions is to go either genuine or non-genuine. To be truthful, I'm not one way or another when it comes to fuel filters. There's a lot of stuff you definitely, I think, should go OEM. But with fuel filters, it's one of those ones, yeah, I don't think so. I just so happen to have a genuine and non-genuine one here. Always, when I do the big trips, I always carry a spare fuel filter just in case I get any bad fuel or water in the fuel along the way. I'll give you a quick look at the two of them, and you can decide for yourself whether or not it's worthwhile, genuine or non. So this one in particular is a Repco diesel filter. The model number on it is RDF3, okay? So if you crack it open, all right, so that's what she looks like. Sealed unit on top with the O-ring on the top there, and then you get another O-ring for the base. Okay, so that just sits in there. So that's the non-genuine. All right, with the genuine one, so I got this from Mitsubishi Australia. Okay, so okay, it's the same deal. This one comes with, again, 2 O-rings. That's what the fuel filter looks like. All right, so you get the larger O-ring for the top, and that just sort of tucks in there like so. All right, and then there's the other one for the bottom. All right, popping them up next to each other. And again, other than the color and the few little indentations, otherwise they look bang on identical. Okay, and it's going to be hard for you to see, but when I look at the internals of them, they look very similar, slight variations. The filter paper in that looks a little bit different, so whether or not one does better than the other, I have no idea. So anyway, I'll keep that one for the spare trips. I'll pop the genuine one in, and yeah, and I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty simple, straightforward. There's a few different methods out there, and everyone sort of approaches it differently. The biggest issue is obviously just trying to get the fuel filter out without spilling too much fuel in the engine bay, because these are full to the brim with fuel. So when you actually unscrew this, you should be careful not to overflow and take it out nice and slowly, so you don't sort of tip it to the side. And yeah, and there's a sensor underneath. I'll show you how to unplug all the wiring and so forth, but it's a very simple job and easy to do. All right, let's get started. All right guys, so here's the fuel filter. Now my setup might be different than others because I've got the dual battery system underneath the bonnet. This is actually an ARB dual system setup, and this actually makes it a little bit more difficult to make it accessible. In your instance, if you've only just got the one battery, then what will happen is you'll have a lot of room in this area. As it stands, mine's are quite tight, so it's a little bit painful to get access to. Fuel filter, again, inlet hose, outlet hose. In some other guys, the way they approach this is they actually remove this hose, they undo these brackets, okay, they unplug the sensor and then they just take this whole thing out. So you can do that if you like. What I'm going to show you is basically how I do it. Similar setup in that I don't touch any of these hoses, I don't touch any of these brackets. I simply unplug the fuel sensor cable and then I use this to remove the fuel filter. So you can use this for either oil filters, fuel filters, it does the same job. And what's good about this is it sets any size, okay? So irregardless, you'll be fine. All right, so let's get into it. All right guys, so here's a bit of a close-up. So with this, it's pretty simple. There's just this little clip under the bottom you got to depress. And when you depress that, you just simply pull. Push that in, and it's that simple. All right guys, so now that you've undone this, just make sure that you get this into a position where it's free. Now what a lot of people stuff up is they twist the wires on the bottom of this and damage it. So be very careful not to do that. All right. Now the way this comes off is you got to turn it in the clockwise direction. All right guys, so what you got to do is just slide this through here. Make sure you got it in the right direction. Put that underneath. Slide that up from behind, nice and simple. And this is the tricky thing with mine, just because of the access and the battery. And then we're going to simply just turn, turn, turn. So we'll use this to just loosen it off, and then we'll do the rest by hand. So we've got a bit more. Now there's not much thread on it, so be careful. You can hear it relieving a little bit of pressure. And that's what I like about this one. You can just simply take that off, bang. All right, so far we haven't dropped any fuel. Now, as a little extra precaution, I've got myself a bit of a milk carton, which I'm going to pop in underneath. And again, be mindful of this wire. That's what's great about the milk carton, is it's super flexible. So you pop that underneath, get your hand underneath it, just keep turning. Okay. Out of the way. Alright, so still haven't dropped any diesel yet. So that's going around again. Okay, there you go. So that milk carton has caught any of the excess fuel. And this is what I'm saying with my setup. It's a little bit difficult, hence why the milk carton's required. And there you go. Alright guys, so if you go and have a look in there, you can see how tight it is, but I have not spilt a drop of diesel anywhere. So that little milk carton hack is brilliant, works really well. Alright, let's go check out the next step now. Alright guys, so what I'll do is I'll give you a bit of a look. So if I pop that out, so if you have a look in there, that's all the diesel that would have dropped into the engine bay. If you don't use the milk carton, you can always use rags and stuff like that. There's a little bit of carbon and that in there, but that's not from the fuel itself. That's probably just from the outside of this. So all right, she's pretty much full to the brim, so just so you understand. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to tip all the fuel out and then we're going to take off this sensor. So what I've done is I've just cleaned this out just to make sure it's nice and clean so we can see if there's any contaminants in this. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of fuel that ends up, that this holds. And what's important too is now you need to make sure that with the new one you re-top it up with fuel, or else you're going to be pressing the pump for a long time to get that amount of fuel back into this and get it filled up. So make sure you have some spare diesel ready. Again, there's no water in there. It's a bit hard to show. Next thing is we need to screw the base off. All right, now you can see, so this you need to be very, very careful with, as this is plastic, okay? So I'll be back. All right guys, now I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but there's little black flecks in there. So there is definitely contaminants in the fuel. Again, I assume that's kind of standard. But yeah, so it's obviously doing its job. All right, so we'll set that aside. So now the only thing I could find big enough was some multis. Again, be careful. This is where you'll probably need this. Combination of the two. Okay, it's enough just to get it loosened off. It's nice and gentle. You can't see it, but mate, she's black as inside. Take that off. All right. You can see all the little fine crap and carbon build up. So we'll give this a bit of a clean. Just get as much out the carbon as you can. Okay, again this O-ring, replace. And this is what I'm saying, be mindful of, you don't twist these wires here, okay? Now some people use a bit of oil. I mean the diesel will be plenty. Nice and firm with your hand. Again, give it a final kick with this, just be careful. Again, if you've got a torque wrench, do it to the specs. All right, now we don't need to worry about this, but we will top it back up with some fresh diesel and then we'll screw it back in. All right guys, now this next step's a bit easier. What I also do is I write the date that I put it in there. I mean, you can write it in your service manual or whatever. I just write it a few times around the top with a permanent marker. All right, so now we'll drop that down the bottom, so we don't need to worry about twisting it. Now, another thing too is with my setup, because it's so difficult, if you fill this right to the brim with fuel, you're going to end up spilling half of it. So I don't fill it right to the brim. And then let's gently lower that in place. Okay, get it underneath, 2 hands. Okay, and then if you get your hand underneath, that's it. And once it's on the thread, then it's super easy. Now that sensor cable's dangling down the bottom, so it's not getting twisted. So do it up as tight as you can with your hand. Okay, and then grab your sensor, pop that through here, get that underneath and around. That's it, keep twisting. That's it, nice and firm. Take that off. That's the beauty about this one. I'll pop a link on the screen. Okay, so this won't be twisted to the wall. I'll give that just a little bit of a wipe. You sometimes can get a bit of dust in there, a bit of gunk. Just make sure that's all good. All right, and we'll pop that around the back. So it's not going to be rubbing on anything. All right, click this back in place. Just like so, perfect. And then the last step in the process, start pumping. So what you want to do, so there'll be fuel literally right up to this point. You want to start pumping this until it goes super firm. And sometimes this might take a couple of goes. So that's super hard now. That's it, okay? Now we're going to kick it over. Let's hopefully it kicks off in the first go. Alright guys, there you go, first kick, first turn, no worries whatsoever. And just what I would do is let it run for a little bit. Yeah, so let it run for a little bit, just check for any fuel leak, make sure there's no fuel leaking at the bottom of the top, just in case. And yeah, Bob's your uncle. Alright guys, that's all done, all looking good, ran beautifully, no hiccups at all. I'll take it for a bit of a drive. See if that fixes my rough idle. If not, off to the mechanics. Whilst I was here, I noticed that this top radiator hose, it's like, yeah, it's not looking that great. So there'll be a future video, I'll replace that. I recently just did the turbo intercooler, and part of that process, I actually had to remove the radiator, and I noticed this top pipe here was beginning to perish. If you actually want to know how to do the intercooler or remove the radiator or remove the shroud, there's videos on the channel for that. But I've got a new, I should say, a second-hand radiator coming, donated from one of the guys from the club. Thank you, Daniel, much appreciated. I'm gonna basically pull this one out and replace it also. So there'll be a future video on that. And otherwise, I've got a bit more going today. I've got my new dishy mount for the car for my new Starlink Mini. Go back to the channel, there's a whole heap of videos on Starlink. Go suss it out. Oh, absolutely love this. My Ryobi charger, battery pack. Absolutely brilliant idea. And this little thing actually powers the Starlink, which is brilliant. Yeah, so there's several videos on that, go check it out. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you found that informative and useful for yourself. If you pop back to the channel, there's a whole heap of videos on there in relation to all the bits and pieces I do around the outdoors and four-wheel driving and so forth, 12-volt systems, solar, DIY stuff, you name it. I'm doing a lot of stuff on Starlink at the moment because I'm doing a lot of testing with my Starlink Mini. I hope I'm being of use to you and you're getting something out of the content. Do us a favour, like, subscribe, comment down below any questions and just share it around. Or even drop us a super thanks and shout us a coffee, you know, that'd be great. Really appreciate it, doing what I can, share and inspire. I'll keep on plugging along. I'm really enjoying pumping out the content and putting out quite a bit now on a regular weekly basis. I've got lots of things planned over this next year, quite a few big trips as well through Central Australia and all over Victoria with the four-wheel drive. I've got my mobile office fully set up now with Starlink, so absolute game changer. But that's it for me today. I'll move on to my next few jobs and go to the channel and check them out. All right guys, cheers, bye.